Okay, so I think we'll get started, and we can just let people enter the room as they come. So again, welcome everyone. My name is Christine Kohlzaug, and I'm the Executive Director at Sustainable San Mateo County. Today, we are very excited to bring you this event about the state of building electrification, especially with a focus on existing buildings in collaboration with Peninsula Clean Energy. Next, please. All right, so that's our event today. So if you're interested in electrification efforts in the county as one of the most effective ways to, at scale, address climate change, you are in the right place. Next slide. All right, so we'll just skip forward. I did want, before we begin, I did want to say a few words about our organization. So we are Sustainable San Mateo County, or SSMC for short. And we are a longstanding local nonprofit. Our vision is a sustainable future for all, for everyone in San Mateo County. We've been around for 30 years, actually hard to believe, but we are celebrating our 30th anniversary this year. And one of our unique approaches has been since the beginning an integrated systems-wide approach towards sustainability. Truly believe in looking at sustainability through the 3 E's lens. That means that we believe that a green economy, social equity, and a healthy environment all need to be working hand in hand for us to truly achieve true sustainability. Next. I did want to provide a quick snapshot of our core programs. We have 5 core programs at this time, and I won't go into details. You're welcome to check out more on our website, and I think Jill will add the address in the chat. But basically, our programs, we are trying to touch at different categories. We have programs that fall under the umbrella of education and inspiration. Those include our annual indicators reports and our monthly happy hours. So we are right now in a happy hour, and what it is all about is we take a deep dive each month into a given sustainability topic. We have some speakers that get us started, and then those happy hours are meant to be highly interactive. So we welcome your questions, your comments. Usually we have breakout rooms. Today we are expecting a large crowd, so it's very likely that we'll just have an interactive Q&A. So that's on the education in side for the happy hours. Then we have some programs that fall under the key metrics and measurement part. So that's the sustainability dashboard and our indicators report. So this year we're also super excited because our focus is actually on electrification. So that's a nice tie-in with today's happy hour. And then, of course, I mean, we also believe that in order for sustainability to really scale up, inspiration is super important. That's our awards program. I'll say a few words about the awards program in a few minutes. And last but not least, we also have programs that are all about tools and solutions. And that's where our Sustainability Ideas Bank falls into that category, because there are some great solutions out there and we don't always have to reinvent the wheel. So go to the next slide, please. So just kind of like a glance at some of our positive impact on the ground. So you can see we have close to 80 solutions as of now in our Sustainability Ideas Bank. Those are geared primarily for cities and businesses. And I would encourage all of you to please get in touch with us. You can reach us at Christine@sustainablesanmateo.org. yes, to let us know if you have some solutions you would like to showcase as well. Next. So just wanted to point out a few upcoming events of interest. And in May, on May the 11th, we actually have our annual award ceremony. Jill will put the link into the chat. And we encourage all of you to come and attend. It's a free event, and we have State Senator Josh Becker, who will be emceeing the session. So it's quite interesting. And then we have a week before, on May 4, we have a VIP exclusive event. Next, please. Wanted to thank our 2022 award sponsors, our benefactor Alexandria, the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, and Linkso Garden Materials. Next. And we have some other great sponsors and even more. You have a link here. If you're interested in sponsorship opportunities, feel free to check out the link, or you can contact us. Next. All right, and if you so feel inclined, we bring you this program free of charge, but if you would like to donate, I mean, feel free to do so, of course. Next. I did want to say a big thank you to my happy hour team. They are making it possible for us to bring you the happy hours. And I wanted to especially point out Roscoe Escobar, our new program manager. And then we have also Jill Reed, who just joined us as our new administrative assistant. I think it's just her 4th day. So thank you for welcoming them to the SSMC family. And we'll have still Marjorie, our current admin, who is going to transition and stay with us till the end of June. I did want to also say a big thank you especially to Leanne. She's one of our long-standing volunteers and has been very active, notably also on the Indicators Report Committee and the Dashboard Project. And if you're interested in volunteering with us, she would be a great person to get in touch with. Next. All right, and I think with that, I'd like to hand it over to Roscoe, who is going to lead the trivia.
Thanks, Christine. Yeah, we have a few trivia questions based on the topic for tonight. So the first question, what is the greatest source of methane emissions in California homes? So you can put up maybe a finger in your video or just throw your guess in the chat. That's hot water, space heating, cooking, or dryers. I'll just give you a minute to guess there. All right, the answer is A, hot water. So as you can see here, hot water is a little more than half, and followed up by space heating. I certainly thought it was cooking, but it is these two who are the greatest. Our next question, how many times more efficient is a heat pump water heater than a gas water heater? 1 time, 2 times, or 3 times? All right, the answer is C, 3 times. And heat pump water heaters are also safer. There's no combustion emissions or hazards. Cleaner, of course, you can power it with renewable energy. And if you have solar and battery backup, it can be more resilient and operate during power outages. Now on to our third question. Over a 20-year period, how much greater is methane's global warming potential compared to carbon dioxide? 74 times, 86 times, and 92 times. So this is how much more of a greenhouse gas is methane. Give you a minute there. So the answer is B, 86 times greater over a 20-year period. So that's really a crucial time frame for addressing climate change. So this kind of puts some context as to why removing gas infrastructure is essential to combating climate change. That concludes our trivia for the night. I'll pass it back to Christine.
All right, thank you, Roscoe. So I think before I move forward and introduce our fabulous moderator for tonight, I just wanted to launch a quick poll. So here we go. So if you wouldn't mind, I mean, we have two questions. One is about how familiar you are with the topic we are discussing tonight. And the other poll is to get a better sense of the sector of, who you are joining us from. So we'll give this another minute or so, a few seconds. Thank you. Okay, so looks like we have like close to 80% of the people who participated. So let me share this with you. So that's great news because the majority of you have some knowledge around building electrification, but it also seems that it's a complicated topic. So we are really great to have, it's great to have our speakers with us here tonight, and hopefully they will clarify things a little bit for us. And then in terms of where people are coming from, it's pretty well distributed. We do have some people also joining us from the academia sector. It's great. All right. So I think with that, I would like to quickly introduce Susan Wright. She is a manager with the County of San Mateo, the Office of Sustainability, and she's basically leading the energy and water group. She just told me that it's going to be a new name soon around climate protection. And what she's been working on is leading initiatives and programs, including energy efficiency and electrification, but also on the water quality improvement and water conservation front. Susan also hosts a monthly working group, RICAPS, that helps the cities collaborate to develop, implement, and track climate action plans, or CAPs. And she's also been partnering with regional stakeholders to scale up efforts to transition both residential homes and the commercial sector from natural gas to all electric energy. With that, Susan, I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you, Christine. And thanks for inviting me, for the stand-in moderator. And before we hear from the speakers, Christine asked if I could just briefly share some of the work that the County of San Mateo is doing in this area. So I'll just share 4 things really briefly. First, about a year ago, the County of San Mateo adopted an update to our government operations climate action plan. So that commits us to carbon neutrality by 2035, which means we're working to decarbonize our facilities. We're also working on an update to our community climate action plan for the unincorporated areas. So that addresses electrification of both new and existing buildings as part of the efforts there. Currently, the Office of Sustainability is working on case studies project to understand strategies and costs to electrify 10 existing single-family homes in the county. And those case studies should be complete by early summer, and we're looking forward to sharing what we're learning. And lastly, Christine mentioned the RICAPS program that stands for Regionally Integrated Climate Action Planning Suite. But as she said, it's helping the jurisdictions develop and implement climate action plans. And this year, we've been collaborating with CCAG and Peninsula Clean Energy to work toward a county-wide climate action goal and a coordinated, what we're calling moonshot strategy to advance building electrification in San Mateo County. So those are just some highlights. We can share details another time. But now let's hear from our speakers. After each one, we'll take a minute or two for some quick questions, and then at the end, we'll open it up for them all to talk together and answer your questions as well. So I will start by introducing Blake Hershaft. He leads key building electrification initiatives, including reach codes and electrification programs at Peninsula Clean Energy. He has been working in the green building space for 15 years. His work has included mechanical and plumbing design, energy modeling, lead consulting, water efficiency, zero net energy buildings, and portfolio energy retrofits. He holds an architectural engineering degree from the Peninsula State University is a registered professional mechanical engineer with the state of California and is a LEED accredited professional. Take it away, Blake.
Yes.
Thank you, Susan. I'll mute there for a second. And thank you, everybody. This is a great group. This is my first Sustainable San Mateo meeting. I'm a programs manager at Peninsula Clean Energy, working on building electrification. And I love this topic. It's pretty much all I think about all the time, especially this particular year. So I'm going to go through stuff. Our other speakers are going to dive really deep into what is going on in San Mateo County for existing building electrification this year. I'm going to give a little more of a high level overview. First, I'm going to start with some incentives that Peninsula Clean Energy is currently offering and what we're up to this year in that regard. What existing building policies are moving elsewhere outside of San Mateo County. And then a little bit of a hint of what's going on in San Mateo County. And then finally, we thought it might be interesting to talk about all electric buildings outside of California versus inside California, to give a little bit of a comparison. All right, our incentives. Today, our incentives, we're offering our heat pump water heater rebates. Those are much higher now that the tech incentive launched. So in San Mateo County, heat pump water heaters can get up to $3,800 and then up to $2,800 for a panel upgrade. If you have a heat pump water heater installed, as part, our incentives cover some of that panel upgrade and $1,000 worth of the heat pump water heater. So while last year our heat pump water heater incentive was $1,000 with a kicker if you're under a low income rate, now the Bayren adds another $1,000 to that, and now Tech adds another $1,100 to $1,800. So if you're thinking about adding a heat pump hot water heater to your house in the next year or so, I would say sooner might be the better. Tech has been very successful so far. Overly successful in San Diego to the point where in San Diego they're going to have to pause the incentive starting on May 31st. The home upgrade program provides income qualified homeowners with home repairs, energy efficiency, and electrification at no cost. REACH codes we support. I used to be a consultant helping with the REACH code project, and now I work for Peninsula Clean Energy. This year, we're in addition to Santa Clara County, we're partnered with Alameda County, that's East Bay Clean Energy, Community Energy, to help pass REACH codes across 60 jurisdictions. And refrigerator recycling, we'll arrange to pick up your old inefficient refrigerator, and they help make sure that the refrigerant in there is disposed of correctly, so it doesn't help harm us with global warming, and you get 35 bucks. Tomorrow, what are we really working on this year? On-bill financing, I know Susan is really excited about, and it's coming this summer, I'm told to tell you. It's really imminent. It's all planned on our side. We've had many, many meetings about it, and all the programming's ready. There's a little bit of a legal review that we're pushing through. That's going to be up to $10,000 for a project that includes electrification, and that'll be paid back on your bill. Really exciting. The less total number of bills, you could also take out a loan, hypothetically, as an option if you didn't have cash on hand to electrify. Then you'd have to pay that separately. Life admin is getting very burdensome. So having it streamlined in one bill, and that'll be 0% interest, I think is a benefit. Or it is a benefit. It should be great. Existing building model code or ordinance is going to come in May. We have a draft of that I've been reviewing right now. We had an exciting workshop that I'll go on about in a little bit. And then big picture planning is an ongoing thing. The board directed us to look at feasibility of 2035 as a target for full decarbonization. And that's what I'm spending about a quarter of my time on. That includes looking at all incentive options and equity, how we can do things equitably, and all types of buildings and systems. It's a big piece, and that'll really inform what incentives we're really going to put forward later this year and next year. All right, existing building policies. I'm excited. New buildings, we couldn't get anywhere in, say, 2015. And new buildings are like almost a home run in a lot of our jurisdictions right now, which is great. Hillsborough adopted electric preferred on Monday. I think they still need a second reading there. It's very exciting. And we're on to existing. So let me talk through some of those. I wanted to set the stage because other cities outside of San Mateo County are starting to move on existing buildings. Chula Vista, town just south of San Diego. Pretty progressive city. I lived in San Diego for 10 years, so I know Chula Vista well. 270,000 people, diverse population. For single family, at the time of permit for additions or major alterations, they're requiring, depending on the type of permit, depending on the type of renovation, efficiency or electrification measures to help you get to that permit. And then in multifamily, we're seeing building performance standards. I apologize for not giving you really good wayfinding on this table. Single family is the column, one column, multifamily is the other column. The exciting thing about Chula Vista is that you can use electrification to help you get permitted for renovation. Denver is really starting to move. I've helped a friend in Denver add a heat pump to their space heater. Large population, 700,000. Denver is starting to get really hot. Air conditioning started to getting added everywhere. And for those who don't know, if your home is air conditioned, it's very low cost to make it a heat pump when you replace that air conditioner. Space and water heating requirements at the time of replacement are going to be phased in throughout this decade. And there's an exemption if it's going to be prohibitively more expensive to electrify versus replacing like for like. But very exciting. They've announced that's coming. Other existing building policies, Half Moon Bay. I think many on the call might know that they passed an end of flow ordinance to let everyone, as part of their new construction reach code. Very impressed by Half Moon Bay. And mandating that all fuel gas is decommissioned. We would also call that methane gas by 2045. New York City is moving pretty quickly as well. They're passing aggressive building performance standards using energy use intensity, which is energy use per square foot. The way that it's measured there and everywhere else that's outside of California, eventually a really strict energy use intensity requires that you electrify. So we're starting to see New York require that for their really large multifamily buildings. And then Vancouver has some really exciting policies maybe coming this year. They're studying them. They haven't been passed yet. They're proposed, but that'll be similar to what people have called a burnout ordinance or electrify upon replacement ordinance for single family. I've talked to Vancouver about that, and they have he's not worried because the single family, he thinks their residents within the city limits can afford to electrify single family. I'm looking to see where that goes. Another thing they're adding is two-way AC.
Blake, you've got about a minute.
A minute. I took longer than I thought. All right. One no-cost measure is two-way AC, and it's exciting. I really want to tell you about something else, though. What's going on outside California? You can't lead on everything. When I worked in Australia, I noted that while California was 15 years ahead of Australia on energy, Australia is 15 to 30 years ahead on water. We're doing very well on policy, but I want to show you this. 26% of California's homes are heated by electricity, whereas in Florida, 92% are heated by electricity. It's pretty wild. The South is just doing better than us as a percentage, and I think that's exciting because there are lessons to be learned. And I'm going to be doing a lot of work to see what's going on in these other places where it's already all electric to try to answer the questions below. And I just think there's a lot of opportunity to learn out there from other places throughout the country. That's what I got.
Great. Let's take one question that was in the chat. Excuse me. It says, I understand targeting homeowners first, but when do you expect you will be able to focus on rental units for heat pump water heating?
Very good question. I am a big renters advocate. I think we are definitely discussing that a lot this year, and particular programs that might work for rentals and also for renters. The unit in the rental is the thing we want to change, and the renter is the one that we want to offer all electric healthy buildings to without harming them. It's definitely going to be a big focus. We've started with owned buildings because it's simpler. And I think I would say by next year, we're going to start to figure out rentals.
Great.
Excited for that
Thank
question.
you. And Blake, in the chat, if you could put information about the tech rebate, someone's asking too.
I will.
Okay, great. Thank you, Blake. And let's move on to our second speaker, Diane Bailey. She is Executive Director of Menlo Spark, a community nonprofit aiming to help the city of Menlo Park and the region become carbon neutral. She also leads the campaign for fossil-free buildings in Silicon Valley. Previously, Diane worked at the Natural Resources Defense Council, Citizens for a Better Environment in Chicago, and a local transportation planning agency in Houston. She is a certified climate change professional and holds a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering from Washington University and a master's degree in environmental engineering from Rice University. And she's an all-around rock star. Okay, Diane, why don't you take it away?
All right, thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Susan, for that intro. Let me see if I can share my screen. Give me 1 second. I'm delighted to be here, and I really appreciate all of the work that Sustainable San Mateo is doing to advance this climate work and electrification. So as Susan noted, my name's Diane Bailey. I'm with a small community climate action group called Menlo Spark. We work with all different sectors to promote transformational and innovative measures on climate. And I'm going to jump right in. Why are we doing this? I think you heard a little bit about this in the beginning. I'm going to try to skate over some of the climate impacts that we're facing quickly, but just as a refresher, we did hear from the IPCC, an international climate body of hundreds of scientists. Just this week, it was the third in a series of reports telling us that we don't have a lot of time to get our act together on climate. We need to really accelerate a transition off of fossil fuels, and particularly off of methane, because it's a short-lived pollutant, as others have described. And also, we are feeling the impacts already with hotter nighttime temperatures and longer heat waves, with more intense wildfires, actually a 5-fold increase in California, and we're feeling the impacts here around the Bay, and that is creating hazardous air quality, and the health impacts from that are pretty stark, comparable in impacts to COVID. And we're also really looking at tremendous flooding from sea level rise. San Mateo County is one of the most vulnerable counties in the US to sea level rise. And this isn't hitting our communities equally. There are some serious equity issues with the impacts of climate, and particularly flooding is hitting communities of color and lower income communities first and the most. So there's actually a really steep cost of inaction to address the climate crisis. And one reason why we're focusing so much on electrification is because it's one of the most effective ways to address the climate crisis. We know that up until about 2020, that the climate impacts were around $2 trillion for all of the catastrophic events around the US. But the White House came up with a new estimate recently that we'll be facing $2 trillion per year. So annual impacts at that staggering level from climate by the end of the century if we don't get our act together. And so climate pollution coming from buildings does play a very large role. And the statistics vary. At the state level, it's around 27% of greenhouse gases, but in some of our local cities where there's not a lot of industry or other pollution sources, it can be the largest pollution source, and particularly when we account for leaking methane or natural gas. So this is a pretty serious problem, and it's not just a climate super pollutant, it also poses very serious public health and safety issues of burning this fossil fuel within our house, this combustion and the indoor air pollution. And I don't have time to get into this today, but I'll give you some resources when we're finished. So Menlo Spark launched with a number of groups, and some of these advocates are here today. In 2019, we launched the Campaign for Fossil-Free Buildings in Silicon Valley. It's a collection of 37 different groups working to really accelerate a transition off of fossil fuels, especially methane, from all homes and buildings throughout Silicon Valley. We started with a focus on REACH codes, and probably most of you know what these are, but a very quick refresher. REACH code is just a wonky term to say that city or county wants to go beyond the state minimum standards on energy requirements for new construction, new buildings. So we're really leading the way here locally. Half of the REACH code or gas ban type policies in the state are right here in Silicon Valley. And in San Mateo County, I've listed the county itself plus 12 cities, and Blake did mention that Hillsborough might be joining that list of cities. They voted earlier this week. They just need a second final vote. But this is really the epicenter of action in California on decarbonizing new construction. However, we really have a lot of work to do with existing buildings, as Blake noted. And Menlo Park has helped lead the way on some of these issues, exploring things like replace on burnout type requirements. All that replace on burnout means is that if you're in an existing home or building and you want to replace a gas device, water heater, other device with a new one, that you really have to consider a non-fossil fueled option. And that's largely means electric or electric heat pump. There was a very difficult discussion around this topic and other electrification pathways last August in Menlo Park. Some of the recommended measures from the Environmental Quality Commission did go forward, which is great. There was widespread agreement that we needed to do a lot more public outreach and education to look at permitting streamlining and to look at other ways to make it easier for folks to electrify. But there really was not enough interest among city leaders in making any hard and fast requirements around replacing gas devices in people's homes. There was a lot of concern that came out over cost, concern about grid reliability, and also a fair amount of misinformation and a little bit of fear mongering. We're starting to see that in other cities around the Bay. San Jose and Half Moon Bay, of course, there were similar efforts last fall. Actually, over the course of all of 2021, there was a very rigorous and well-planned effort to craft an electrification ordinance that would not only have requirements for new construction to go electric, but also have some requirements around remodels and existing homes and buildings. And as you heard from Blake, they have kind of a groundbreaking end of gas flow deadline of 2045. Unfortunately, the provisions for existing buildings didn't go through because similar to Menlo Park, there was a fair amount of community concern and opposition. That's not to say that it can't go forward in the future, and we hope it will, and we'll certainly support that. I think there's more time needed to do a lot more in-depth community engagement and outreach to let people know that this is not a scary thing, that they can actually have healthier and cleaner homes by making the switch from gas to electric. And when an appliance breaks down and needs replacement, that's a good time. But in February of this year, I'm very happy to say that Half Moon Bay did approve an all-electric REACH code for new construction and this end of gas flow that we've been talking about. So that was a great step forward. Now back to Menlo Park for a moment. In the discussions about what to do about existing buildings, not just homes, but also multifamily and commercial, there's been a lot of thought put into how can we sort of institutionalize programs to make it easier for people who want to do the right thing and get off gas, but are currently having challenges because it might be difficult to find a contractor, the cost can be very high. There's just not a lot of expertise locally at the moment in the current contractors in helping people go electric. In Menlo Park, Menlo Spark and some other community leaders have been working with the city to develop an alternative program with a company called Block Power. Now they've helped over 1,000 different homes and buildings, a lot of affordable housing actually, make this transition and go fully electric, and at the same time do some health upgrades and efficiency upgrades. It's a Brooklyn-based company, but they recently opened offices on the West Coast, and they're talking to several cities in California actually about citywide electrification programs. Susan, I don't know how I'm doing on time here, but
You have about a minute.
okay, I'm going to work on wrapping up. But yesterday, the City of Menlo Park did hold a study session on the concept of a citywide electrification partnership with this company called Block Power. And it's very exciting. The partnership would help any home or building owner who's interested in making the switch, but also would spearhead some job training programs to train up more installers to do this type of work. So stay tuned. I think the city gave the green light to develop this partnership further, and it should be coming back later this spring, and that's exciting. Oops. Okay, just a couple more. So we also have a really exciting opportunity through the current REACH codes that are going through another cycle with the state building code to add, in addition to all electric new construction, to add some provisions to get at existing buildings. Those are being developed right now, and that'll be really exciting to see how that goes forward. Could be a second chance for Menlo Park, Half Moon Bay, and others. And I want to include a quick note about what you all can do if you want to get involved, if you want to take action, not just to support all electric policies, but also to green your own home. There are some resources here on this slide, and for elected officials to encourage them to take the pledge from Rewiring America to be an electrification mayor or official. And lastly, oops, I want to thank you and say that this isn't easy, but I also want to do a very quick note alongside my contact information, a note about our own electrification adventures. Christine asked me to add this, that a lot of us advocates are working on electrifying our own homes. And we're kind of working out the details and finding that it's not always super easy, but it's definitely possible, and there are ways to find savings. And so I have some bullets here that I'm not going to go through all these, but just to say that my kids were actually super supportive of us getting rid of our gas stove. This is my daughter Audrey making some crepes on a little single induction cooktop that we got while we were in transition, and I'm happy to say that we've since gotten rid of our gas stove and we have a wonderful induction cooktop from IKEA. Actually, it's working great. She's still cooking her crepes and we love it. And I want to encourage everyone to give it a try. If you're having trouble electrifying, to try out the Electrification Home Ambassador Program, where you can get free assistance from your friends and neighbors. And with that, I will thank you very much for having me. And if we have time to take a few questions, I'd love to do that.
Thank you, Diane. There are no specific questions, but lots of kudos for you in the chat. So I think we'll probably catch you on questions at the end too. But thank you. Okay, well, we will move on to our last speaker, Adrienne Atherton. She's the City of Brisbane Sustainability Manager. Prior to joining the city, she served as Executive Director of Sustainable San Mateo County from 2011 through 2017. She has a BS in Industrial Engineering from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, has studied architecture and work in design, construction, and logistics, and holds LEED AP and NAB CEP solar certifications. Adrienne lives in Half Moon Bay and serves on the board of the San Mateo Resource Conservation District. Welcome, Adrienne.
Thank you, Susan. And just give me a moment here. I will share my screen. Okay. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the building electrification work that has been happening in Brisbane over the last few years. But I want to first start by setting the context for Brisbane. So as with a lot of other cities in this area, the lion's share of our emissions are in the transportation sector. You can see our VMT is vehicle miles traveled. That's really passenger vehicles. It's the biggest share. But our next largest share of emissions is buildings. These two sectors here in blue, our commercial and residential sectors. So we really knew that we were going to need to take action on addressing building emissions. Fast forward to last year, we actually adopted a climate emergency declaration last July at our city council. And really this was to establish a commitment to addressing the climate and doing so urgently and equitably. And that declaration helped us to update our expectations. So we set a goal of carbon neutrality by 2040 and a stretch goal of 66% reduction from our 2005 baseline by 2030, which is fast approaching. So jumping back in time to 2019 is really when these building electrification and building emissions efforts really took off. We spent a large part of that year focusing on two efforts that addressed both new buildings and existing buildings. So on the new building side, we were very involved with the regional REACH codes effort that addressed our new buildings. And then we also had a grant from the Bay Area Air Quality Management District to focus on our existing buildings. And that program is called the Building Efficiency Program, and it specifically focuses on this bigger slice of the pie of our commercial and industrial sector. So I'll talk about both of those efforts, which started in 2019. They actually both passed City Council at the same meeting in December. It was quite a way to close out the year, and are really ongoing efforts which continue to this day. So on the REACH code side of things, Brisbane first adopted a REACH code back in the 2016 code cycle to require buildings to have solar photovoltaic. And then with the 2019 effort, we wanted to make sure to continue that solar requirement, but also add additional requirements for building electrification, EV charging, and we actually have some fire protection requirements as well, being that Brisbane is largely in the wildland urban interface, or WUI. I'm not going to talk about those today, but I do think that they are an important thing for cities in those areas to consider, another thing that you can do with REACH codes. So on our photovoltaic solar side of things, in 2016, we established REACH codes that were really setting a really low bar for requiring solar on new buildings. And what we found was that just by requiring any solar at all, we didn't have to require a large amount of solar. These are really, if you're familiar with solar systems, my home solar system in my very small home in Half Moon Bay is 5 kilowatts. So these are really small systems, but by requiring any solar, almost every building went and right-sized their solar. So when 2019 REACH code cycle came along, we had a statewide requirement for small residential buildings to have solar. So that allowed us to drop that requirement for those buildings since it was superseded by the state requirements, but we wanted to continue those solar requirements for those other buildings where the state didn't have that requirement yet. You might be noticing that we also had cool roof requirements in 2016. We found in the 2019 cost effectiveness studies that those weren't really penciling out in our area, so we went ahead and dropped that requirement. On the building electrification side, we followed Menlo Park's lead. They were one of the first cities to take forward a building electrification ordinance in this area, and we did mostly a copycat ordinance. We did end up having some exceptions for residential to have cooking or fireplace that was gas. And if they do include gas appliances, they need to be pre-wired for electric conversion in the future. On the commercial side, we did require all electric buildings with a few exceptions, such as life sciences buildings, and then commercial kitchens if they had a demonstrated need for the style of cooking, or if the building could demonstrate a technical infeasibility. And then lastly, I know this is focused on building electrification here today, but I'm really proud of the EV charging infrastructure REACH code that Brisbane adopted. It is still, I believe, one of the strongest around. The state code doesn't require a whole lot currently, and even going forward, the EV requirements are still pretty modest. To address that really big part of the pie that is transportation emissions from passenger vehicles, we felt it was really important to make sure that we were taking every opportunity for new buildings to provide that electric vehicle charging, especially for residential spaces. So I know there's a lot of acronyms here. L2 is our level 2 spaces. Those are that 240 volt dryer outlet kind of charging. That's a little bit faster, but the kind of charging that typically folks would maybe do overnight at home. And then EV ready means that that is basically plug and play, and EV capable means that the capacity is there. So, you know, really trying to make sure that we incorporated these requirements, especially at residential, and making sure that all of those multifamily spaces are getting charging access. And then having our commercial buildings, especially those where folks are spending a long time at those buildings, like office buildings, that they have a higher percentage of charging. So as
we have about
been,
1 minute left. Sorry about that.
oh, geez. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm going way too slow here. So new buildings, as has been discussed, this is something that we are all talking about regionally. I participated in the meeting this afternoon. All of this is very early in the conversation. So some of the ideas that will be floating are extending electrification to existing buildings, closing the loopholes on our new buildings, and perhaps looking at following Half Moon Bay's lead on an end of gas flow date. On the existing building side of things, our building efficiency program adopted in 2019 addresses commercial and multifamily buildings 10,000 square feet or larger. It's kind of a hybrid between a benchmarking ordinance and a building performance standard. And what it does is requires those buildings to benchmark their energy and water data and share that with the city. That requirement kicked in last year and is an annual requirement. And in a couple of years, I'm gonna, since I don't have time, just speed right through this. In a couple of years, buildings will either have to demonstrate that they are high performing by a number of different methods, or they're gonna have to start to do energy and water audits and take some action to make some improvements. We saw about an 87% compliance rate in our first year of buildings that reported. We've got a few stragglers. We're still working to get them on board, but we thought that was a really excellent way to start. And we are expecting emissions reductions from this program to be about 2,700 metric tons within 5 years of ordinance adoption, which amounts to about 14% reductions from the sector. So really this ties in with building electrification because some of the actions that folks can take when they do an audit to be able to participate, you know, qualifying actions are electrification measures, and some of those performance options are ones that are easily achieved for a building that has already electrified. And so just to end, as Diane did, on a personal note, we are also on our electrification journey. And it hasn't always gone as smoothly as I would have hoped, especially as somebody who works in this industry. You know, getting caught off guard by equipment dying is a very real thing that happens to a lot of us. It happened to us. So really pay attention to how old your stuff is and when it might be dying, and plan ahead for that. And then definitely check out, I know I saw Tom Cabot is on today. He has been a huge advocate for the Watt diet. I had never heard of this back a few years ago when my journey started. So we ended up investing a lot of money in a panel upgrade that maybe we wouldn't have needed had we tried some of the strategies that Tom offers in the Watt diet. So definitely make sure that you are thinking about that and planning ahead. And lastly, I will point out on the building efficiency program, if there are other policymakers in the area that want to learn more about that, we do have a toolkit that you can use to basically help to establish a similar kind of program. And with that, thank you.
Thank you. There's some various comments in the chat. There's one, for instance, about cool roofs. That's more of a comment than a question. There is a question that oh, I just jumped, sorry. Here we go. I don't know if it's for you to answer or the panelists. We'll see, Adrian, if you can answer this, but I'm always interested in the embodied energy in existing functioning systems like our furnace and oven. Is it always right to get rid of methane gas appliances regardless of age or functionality?
Well, thank you, Ricky, for that excellent question. I don't know that I have a very good or straightforward answer than that. My sense is that yes, but if it is a very new high efficiency appliance, that may not always be the case. And I don't know if Diane or Blake or anyone else has better metrics on that, but I think the methane emissions are generally outweighing the embodied emissions of equipment.
Yeah, I have to agree with Adrian on that, that if no matter how new, if you have an opportunity to replace a methane gas appliance, it's definitely worth it just from the public health benefits that you get to avoid indoor combustion inside your home, but also for the climate benefits, it is always worth it to replace a gas appliance. We've been weighing that with our house with a really well-working gas furnace that's not too old, but the time has come to kick that gas furnace out, even though it has many years left. I think the need to get rid of the methane gas outweighs the useful lifetime on the appliance.
Thank you. Well, Christine, let me know that we're not going to do breakout rooms because there is such a large group and everyone will just want to hear from you. And we just have about 5 minutes in the main session for conversation, although if people want to stay afterward, the speakers have said they can stay for a few more minutes. So I'm going to kick it off with one question for all three of you. I love this question. If you would wave a magic wand, what is the one thing you would change right now to accelerate the transition to electrify our building sector? Just that. That's the one thing.
Well, I know that Diane mentioned Menlo Park working to bring block power into the region. And I think that would be a really excellent opportunity. I think having that one-stop shop for information and perhaps subsidies or bulk buy that can really help people. It's a difficult thing to navigate the process. So even just having somebody who's knowledgeable and can help you if you don't need subsidies is a huge benefit. So I think having that one-stop shop like a Block Power or someone else that knows what they're doing and maybe can bring some financing to the table as well would be my wave the magic wand.
Diane, did you have a thought?
Sure. Yeah. So building on Adrian's comment, this gives me two things. I don't think cities should continue to issue permits for fossil fuel devices, whether it's a generator or a stove or any permit, because it's out of line with most cities' climate values, and a lot of cities have declared a climate emergency. It's just terribly out of line with city values to issue those permits. And if those permits are absolutely necessary for whatever technical reason, I think there should be a steep mitigation fee, and that funding can go to help low-income households make the switch.
Right. How about you, Blake?
I'll do an engineering technical one. Either 120-volt equipment or magic wand in our houses are 240-volt like Norway, which is all electric and 100% carbon-free electricity.
Great.
One or the other.
Just that. What role does energy efficiency still play in the equation?
Well, I'll jump in and say energy efficiency is super important because it helps get costs down before you electrify, so that you can use kind of smaller and more efficient equipment and stay within your current panel, just alluding to the watt diet that Adrian talked about.
Any others from our speakers, or shall we move on?
Well, I was waiting to see if Blake would want to jump in on this, being that he's from PCE, but I think the point that I would make is that a lot of folks bring up the question of, is our electric grid going to be able to handle it if we electrify everything? And so I think we can't forget that there are limitations to how much we can do and have on the grid all at the same time. We need to modernize and expand our grid, but we can also keep things efficient. There's waste is waste. Even if it's clean energy, there's no reason to waste it.
I'll make it quick. The more energy efficient, the less renewables we have to build, obviously. However, I will note that electrification is far and away the biggest percentage savings in energy efficiency we can have. I mean, you're talking about 5% versus 60%. So
yeah, I'd like to add if I could.
Go ahead.
Susan, I'd like to add if I could.
Sure, go ahead.
I'm Rick Bunning, I'm the mayor of San Mateo and a member of the board of PCE. What I do know is that right now we're limited. We don't have a completely built out electric infrastructure enough to provide for everything to be all electric right now. So there is a transition happening. But I don't think that people are going to be adopting so much all electric like overnight that it's not going to allow for the transition. I think the two will work hand in hand, but it has to take place over the next 8 or 10 years. We don't have until 2045 or 2040, or I even think 2035 is a little far out personally. So, but I would encourage everybody to take every step possible to make their house as efficient as possible and electrify whatever they can. The more efficient the house, the less their load is, the less they draw. So that's the key.
Thanks, Rick. And Anne, I see your hand and we have about 2 minutes. So do you have a question? Oh, Tina, the hand went down. Okay.
No, I'm here. I hit
there
the
you
wrong
are.
button.
Okay, go ahead.
You called my comment a comment. This was to Adrian and her comment that sadly Brisbane took away cool roofs part when I'm trying to add it. The reason is for public safety power shutoffs. We have to do our part to reduce electricity in our homes. And UCLA has been doing a series of climate resiliency work and put cool roofs over planting trees in terms of heat islands and reducing AC energy consumption. So I'd love to see your old ordinance that you got rid of. We're hoping that California will adopt emergency cool roof standards with the right type of reflective paints. So I agree with, I'm also a board member now, right now I'm an alternate to PCE. We need to do our part to reduce. I've gone almost full electric. It is not easy and it is not cheap. And for middle income, we keep concentrating our efforts for poor people, but middle incomes are the likely adopters who cannot afford to do it. Thanks. Adrian, please send me that. Do you know how to reach me still? Thank you. And good work.
Thanks, Susan. I'll find you. Or sorry, Anne.
I'm wondering, Christine, did you want to do any final announcements now? So we finish at 6:30 for anyone who needs to go, and then people want to stick around for another couple of minutes. We can do that.
Yeah, thank you, Susan, and really fascinating conversation. Thank you all for jumping in. I mean, I appreciate to see all the comments in the chat. Yes. So I just wanted to remind everyone that we are having our upcoming awards ceremony. So that's going to happen on May 11th. And I would like to invite all of you to come. We have some very inspiring awardees this year, and I hope that you will join me to celebrate their achievement, get inspired, and hopefully amplify their work. So with that, I think I'll pass it back on to you, Susan. We are approaching the end of our happy hour here, but I believe we have a few minutes for those of you who want to stay on and perhaps continue the conversation. And also a quick note, so in May, we are going to skip our monthly happy hour because we have the awards event, but I hope to see many of you back in June. And please do stay in touch. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, if anyone needs to hop off, go ahead. But I thought I'd go to a really straightforward question from William in the chat. He said, I have heard many concerns about the noise from heat pumps, particularly in the house for heat pump water heaters. Any comments?
For in-the-house heat pump water heaters, I do think designing for noise is appropriate. I don't know if it's because I'm a mechanical engineer, but I do not like fan noise. So ducting them or thinking about where they are in relation to where you live is important. You can turn a lot of them off with your phone if it's, say, near your kitchen or something. Certainly something to think about. If you're worried about outdoors, I think selecting something that's on the quieter end of the spectrum. Usually the higher efficiency ones would be nice for your neighbors and your outdoor barbecues.
Yeah, I'll just
Great.
add quickly to look for inverter driven heat pumps. Those are very quiet. They might be a tiny bit more expensive, but you'll make that money back on through efficiency and savings on your utility bills.
Great. Question addressing equity. How can we assure that building electrification resources are invested effectively and equitably?
Blake, do you want to talk about PCE's program?
The home upgrade program we started right away with a low income program that's on the turnkey side of things, trying to start to test the waters on that. We definitely think we're constantly making sure when we're talking about existing building policies and also programs that we're both helping our disadvantage as much as possible and not harming. I think there's a lot of work to be done, and it's central to the work this year. And I can't wait to talk about it more later this year after we've studied it more.
I'll just add, Susan, if it's okay, that I think affordability and equity are crucial to the success of region-wide electrification. And when it comes to efforts for direct installation programs like with Block Power or utility run programs like what Blake described, I think it'll be really important to look at outside philanthropy and state revenue sources and even recovery funds from the federal government to try to subsidize some of these projects.
Thank you. Could you all talk about the training component and the important role it plays? And I think this is maybe about having contractors being trained for these electrification projects.
I'm okay to talk about that one. With all the supply chain things going on and the smaller workforce, and it looks like there might be a longer term trend in a reduced size of the workforce in the United States. We are somewhat concerned about the availability of the workforce there. So we think workforce training is going to be a really big component, both at the union level, union jobs especially, and also just generally bringing more people into the trades as they come out of high school and college, I think is going to be critical. We're worried about the number of people who can install these things.
And then I absolutely agree with what Blake said. I think also you hear a lot of stories of people being convinced to upgrade gas or stay with gas at a time of transition from their contractors, even those who specifically ask for electric. So I think we need to really make sure that we're educating the existing contractors that we have and not having them dissuade folks who are otherwise willing or interested or, at least curious from moving ahead with electrification. It's not always clear if that's just a lack of awareness of how far some of the electric appliances have come lately or something else, but you do hear a lot of stories about that, and it's concerning.
I'd like to add something to that. So I've been a union representative for a good part of my life, and I work with the building trades a lot. I'm a retired union carpenter, and I'm in close contact with the electrical local here, Local 617 in San Mateo County all the time. I do know that for a trained, skilled professional electrician, doing heat pumps is no different than doing any other kind of industrial or project they always come up against new materials to work with and new designs, new schematics they have to work with. It's not unusual, but they're trained to use their skills to calculate and know how to do everything they need to do. So electricians, and I know there's no shortage of electricians at the union hall. One of the problem is that most of the contractors out there who do the work don't employ union trained and skilled professionals. And so I think those contractors are more reluctant to take on and start installing things that they don't know if their people are able to install competently. They don't want to have callbacks. They don't want to be out there with, putting in things that they're not sure they're going to be able to stand behind because it's going to cost them money to do it. So yes, those contractors need to either find some skilled and trained people to do the work, or they, this is really going to be the key. Okay. And when we talk about installers for so many different things, when it comes to electrical, it's not just being able to install solar or being able to install a few things. You have to actually know electricity. Anybody that's going to attach a solar system to your electrical panel needs to actually know that that panel is suited and of the proper size to be able to handle the additional work that's being brought to it. So people who aren't trained don't know how to figure that out. So I just exercise some caution. Would ask people to exercise some caution and make sure you ask some good questions. If you do have solar installed, for instance, make sure they send an actual electrician out to do the connecting, because they don't always do that. You have to ask for that. Yeah.
Great, thanks. Adrian, Christine was asking you in the chat, do we know why these contractors would recommend their clients to stay away from electrification? Is it lack of knowledge, or because they've already have their vendors set up, or just change management challenges? What is it?
I think I get the sense it's kind of all of the above. It's this is what I've always done, and they just keep doing the same thing. It's still making them money. There's plenty of work out there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes. Did someone have a question? Oh, okay. Let's shift gears, and the question is, what role does storage play in electrification?
Well, I'll go ahead and just say, I think storage plays a really important role in limiting peak energy use, which is expensive. And Blake, you can speak to that. And it's expensive for our energy providers, but it also really allows a level of resilience that when the power grid goes down and you have battery energy storage, especially if it's coupled with solar panels, you have a guarantee of continued power to at least keep some of your essentials going. If you have medical devices, your fridge, things like that. But it also allows people to save money because they can avoid paying peak energy rates in the evening and just use the energy stored that was collected from their solar during the day.
Any other comments on that?
I would just say absolutely agree. I think storage is a big component, especially for the folks who live in areas like I do in Half Moon Bay that have seen a number of public safety power shutoffs. Folks are not excited about not having electricity, and that's a common reason to not want to have electrification requirements, is because, well, at least if the power's out, I can still have hot water and cook with gas. And so having that backup power is hugely beneficial to making sure you can keep everything running, and really provides a much more reliable system overall.
Right. Well, I think we've kind of covered our main comments or questions. Are there any final comments that our panelists would like to make before we wrap up?
Yeah.
I guess just one more thought on the backup power. I'm really excited to see where EV to grid or EV to home, having all of our electric vehicle batteries, which are much larger than the ones that are typically installed in homes, as that backup source of power sounds like a really exciting future. And so I'm very much looking forward to that being part of the mix as this whole building electrification industry moves forward.
I'll go so that Diane can close. I really, I just can't thank this group enough, all the public, everybody who's a public official here and part of the public, and all the residents of San Mateo County and Sustainable San Mateo County, just total leadership doing globally significant stuff. And I love it. So thank you.
Well, I want to challenge everyone to not accept the status quo, that when a group of scientists, if you can get 300 scientists to agree on anything, I think that is a major feat. And when that many scientists are all saying with a lot of clarity that we have to move off of fossil fuels, that there's just not space in the global carbon budget for continued fossil fuel use if we want a livable planet. We have to find a way. And I think when our city and county leaders say, oh, this is too hard or too expensive, we have to ask, okay, if not this policy, then what? How are we going to collectively get off of fossil fuels? And a lot of us on this Zoom, we've tried to lead by example, but at the end of the day, we need citywide and region-wide policies. And I think we should never stop asking for that.
All right, well, that's a great way to end it. Diane, thank you so much. And I guess I would say thanks to all the panelists. And Christine, did you want to say anything else or take us out?
Yeah, that was an electrifying session. And yeah, we just need to continue. I mean, the time to act is now. We cannot wait. So thank you all for your leadership. Thank you, county leaders that were on the call. Thank you to the general public. Thank you to some fabulous speakers. Susan, terrific moderation, and we'll see you in May. And
thank you for hosting this, Christine.
And let's help each other. We can do it. Thank you.